It's fun for me to see so many returning faces, and so I need to tell you the purpose of this event is twofold. One is to provide an opportunity for you all to have a chance to learn new activities and perhaps research or other cognitive and intellectual ideas from some of the best and the brightest in the area. And it's also an event that provides funds for us to send our students to the state PE convention and the national convention. And many of the students who benefited from the funds that we have generated from this event are presenting today, as a matter of fact, where they are here participating. And so we thank you all for that. It is now my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Rebecca Hassan, who is an assistant professor in health and fitness and movement science in the School of Kinesiology. And I think you're probably all familiar with that poster that used to exist years ago that said, "Everything I ever learned about life, I learned in kindergarten." Well, in Rebecca's world, everything she ever learned about life started in physical education. And so I think you'll all be really informed by what she has to tell you today. She is a student who earned her PhD at the University of Massachusetts, and while she was there, she was a volleyball player. And I told her she had to share that with you because many of you are former athletes as well. Her research here at Michigan, it focuses on identifying the causes and consequences of pediatric obesity in multi-ethnic populations. She's doing a really extensive study right now where she recruits students from all over southeastern Michigan to come and sometimes exercise, sometimes not, sometimes eat healthy foods, sometimes not, and I'm sure she'll share that with you as well. But it's been really interesting for me to see the kinds of research subjects that she deals with. She'll focus on the untapped potential of physical education and sport to improve the health and well-being of children and adolescents. And so I think you might find this to be a very interesting presentation. And she's a really good friend of mine, and I'm very happy to introduce her. Rebecca?
Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank Pat and Carrie for allowing me to speak with you all this morning. I think how I was selected for this talk was because as I was teaching the class physical activity across the lifespan, there were different lectures that involved the human capital model, physical education, and all of the things that we learn from physical education, sports, exercise, physical activity. And every day I would run into Pat's office and say, "Did you know that PE taught us this?" And she would give me the look like, "Yes, I knew that." "Did you know that sport did that?" And she, "Yes, Rebecca, I knew that you did that." So my excitement for physical education was increasing steadily as I was teaching this in some of our health and fitness and movement science classes. She was like, "You should come speak to us because your research is very interesting and it ties in because all of us in this room are very interested in child development, in adolescent health, and the well-being of the children that we serve on a daily basis." So as Pat had said, sport and physical activity, or PE, has been very integral in my life. I played volleyball, but was introduced to volleyball in 8th grade through my PE teacher, Mrs. Hayes. It's surprising that I still remember her name. Maybe I remember the wrong two songs for her. I'm showing my age here. But yeah, she was introducing us to volleyball, and this was something that I really liked to do. And I had two options. My mother said, "Well, I wanted to either go out for cheering or play a sport." And she was like, "Play a sport." And so I went out for the volleyball team and played all 4 years in high school, and then was recruited to play volleyball at the University of Massachusetts. I also ran a little bit of track at the very end, and so sport has been very important in my life because at the University of Massachusetts, I did both my bachelor's, master's, and PhD all there. And I was introduced to kinesiology through my participation in sport. I first got into kinesiology wanting to enhance my own sports performance, but as I learned more and more about how exercise, physical activity, and sport can help promote health and well-being to the general population, my research interest changed more in that direction. So as I graduated and went on to the University of Southern California and UC San Francisco, I was much more interested in child or adolescent health, and that is where the focus started to shift towards pediatric obesity. So again, I think for many individuals, particularly women that participated in sports post the Title IX era, that physical activity or sport has offered a lot of opportunities for both boys and girls growing up. For myself, it gave me the opportunity to attend college and actually have all of my training paid for. And we know that from the literature, this is from the economics literature, that there's a lot of, I'm not special case, that this is true for many women or girls that participate in sport throughout the country, that after the passing of Title IX, we saw with a 10% rise in state-level female sports participation. This generated a 1% increase in female college attendance and a 1 to 2% rise in female labor participation. We see these same trends in male sports as well. But this is interesting. Just by playing sports alone, not dealing with academics, not dealing with household environments, but sport alone led to an increase in economic and educational opportunities for girls and for boys as well. But again, it seems like sport gets a lot of the credit for a lot of these achievements. And as we know, that everyone in our American society for the last couple of generations has been exposed to physical education. That through K through 12, up until recently, everyone had to participate in PE to some extent. And this was a mandate by the federal government, one of the first curriculums that was mandated by the federal government, as most of you all know, after World War I. And the primary purpose when it first started, just to give you a little history lesson, is that we know that we were training our boys or our men to be physically fit for military service. That we realized that a lot of our kids or children were not fit and were not able, and this was a function of national problem in our national security. So it was from the national government or federal government that they implemented these fitness programs in the schools. We then transitioned to where, when I was growing up, it became more of a team sport model, where again, there were different, kids were identified in our physical education classes that you had some sort of potential that would be great for sports, and this is kind of the era that I grew up in. But we know that that has transitioned a bit to where we now have our education, our physical education is focusing on physically educating all children. So not just identifying those that would be good for sport, but that let's make our kids, everyone fit, from boys and girls, those with full, typically developing, and those with mental or physical disabilities. And this is just a nice summary slide in terms of PE or physical education and sport gets their most of their publicity from the benefits with physical fitness. That we know with the health improvements that children get with PE, it's fairly dramatic, and there's very few other things that a person can do in their life that would improve their overall health and well-being outside of exercise. We also know that PE gets the credit, or physical education gets the credit for setting the fitness standards. That there's a lot of, we have the President's Council on Physical Fitness, we have the Fitnessgram, and we have the Rockport Fitness Physical Fitness Test. That it's PE that really brought fitness to the national agenda and really set the standards for what is fit and what is unfit, and there's a wide, and so PE should take a hand for that in terms of creating a healthy environment and a healthy well-being for our children and adolescents. We also know this is a slide or just an infographic from the CDC that PE doesn't just focus on the physical health, but we know that there's a lot of data that's suggesting that physical education leads to increased academic achievement, that fit kids learn better, and this is a nice little tagline, the more they burn, the better they learn. And people are starting to see, there's a lot more research that I'll discuss in a couple of slides, that focuses on the different aspects of physical activity, physical education, and how that improves standardized test scores, how that improves grades, in this country and abroad. So here is a slide here. They didn't have any pretty graphs for me to show you, but this is a nice slide that was done in Sweden. And it was looking at the association between physical activity and fitness and academic achievement. And what they demonstrated in this study was that individuals or women, fitness was more important for boys, whereas high-intensity physical activity was more important for girls in terms of improving their grades or improving their test scores. And we saw that this is just a cross-sectional study, but we did see some preliminary evidence to suggest that there is a relationship between these two factors. This is another study that was done in the United States, and this was looking at SAT scores, and you can see on the bottom is the fitness gram, each of the different categories. So if you passed one, so on the x-axis, if you passed one of the measures, 2 of the measures, or all the way up to 6 of the measures, you can see the reading and the mathematics scores in the blue and purple. And as fitness increased, you see a concomitant increase in the SAT scores for these children. These are 9th and 11th grade students. So again, this is cross-sectional, and this is focusing more so on fitness. But this study that was recently published not too long ago in the American Journal of Public Health showed specifically physical education participating in PE. This was a longitudinal study looking from 5th grade, 7th grade, all the way up to 9th grade, showed that grades were increasing as the more participation that kids had with PE. So this is a really nice study that showed that test scores were increasing the more PE that children got. So not only focusing on physical fitness, but also focusing on the academic achievement aspects of participating in structured or organized activity is very important, and we should be very pleased with that outcome. We also know this is, again, maybe one of the lesser knowns for the outside community. We know that the development of fundamental motor skills or movement skills, the primary place in which we learn these activities is in our physical education classes. Throughout all the different types of movements, types of skills that individuals learn from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, we know that participating in activity has a lot to do, can increase the different brain development, cardiovascular health, bone development, and hand-eye coordination. Interestingly, with some of the studies in our laboratory, when we bring 8 to 10-year-olds into our lab and do a VO2 max test, we can see the kids that participate in structured, organized sports or have PE at their school versus those that don't, because the ones that have a lot of physical activity or that engage in a lot of physical activity, they can actually walk on the treadmill very fine, just like an adult would. But those kids that do not participate in a lot of physical activity or do not have structured PE, you can see that their fine motor skill or their motor development is not quite developed because they have a very hard time walking on a treadmill, almost as if they forgot how to walk. And we have to retrain them on how to walk on a treadmill. And when we ask their parents how much physical activity do they get on a regular basis, they say little to none. So even anecdotally, looking in the lab, we can visually see the differences in fundamental motor skill development skills. But from a laboratory perspective or from a research perspective, here's additional data that shows, was published in MSSE about 10 years ago, that shows how fundamental movement skills increase as a function of time spent in organized physical activity. So this is minutes per week, and we see movement skills, and these are the different types of either catching or running, having eye-hand coordination, leaning your body forward or backwards, having the right body position to catch a ball. So we see that the higher, again, the more, for both males and females, the more time spent in organized physical activity, the higher the motor movement skills that these kids developed. So again, more information on, not only increase physical fitness, it helps with academic achievement and also development or fundamental movement skills. In terms of self-esteem, we all know that if you look from a social or behavioral standpoint, that PE also has a very important impact on social behavioral skills or things like self-esteem, the emotional health of our kids. There wasn't too much data that specifically looked at physical education, but we do know from this meta-analysis that looked at structured exercise intervention versus no intervention at all. This is a meta-analysis, so it's a very messy slide. But if you just look here at this line means that if the dot or the diamond falls on this side, that means exercise helped to increase self-esteem in children and young adults. Whereas if the diamond falls on this side with all of these different studies, that means that it favored the control and there was no improvement. And you can see here that the majority of the studies show that there was some improvement with self-esteem with exercise alone, not in combination with any other sort of intervention. And we know from a lot of our psychological theories or psychosocial theories such as self-efficacy or self-determination theory, that yes, by participating in different types of physical activity can increase someone's self-worth, self-esteem, and body image. And this is, again, something that, although there isn't direct evidence to say that PE increases self-esteem, we know that the majority of the physical activity that children get is in PE, and so research will probably soon show a lot of information on self-esteem, especially with our current issues around bullying. And then finally, I'll just add, this was another paper that we discussed in our classroom, looking at how physical education and social behavioral skills. One of the things that Pat always brags about is this is the only curriculum that has taught us how to be nice to each other, that has taught us how to get along, that teaches us how to leadership skills, how to dissolve an argument. And it's not, math doesn't teach you that, science doesn't teach you that, but physical education does. And we also know that physical education, and particularly sport, can help with social cohesion. So helping people come together, feel connected, a sense of solidarity, and a willingness to intervene for the common good. And that's an important aspect, particularly as we talk about with this emerging bullying epidemic. How can we use PE to help reduce some of that, those problems that we're seeing with kids not getting along, particularly in this cyber era? We also, there's some evidence to suggest more so in sport than PE, but we know that social cohesion is also associated with lower crime rates and reduced truancy, so kids are less likely, the fit kids are much less likely to miss school or be absent from school if they compare to kids that are unfit or that are not participating in organized physical activity. So this is, again, this might be a little difficult for you to read, but I put the email or the website address right here. But Nike has launched this whole campaign called Design to Move. This Design to Move campaign. But Nike has launched this new campaign. It was launched in 2012, focusing on we need to get our kids moving. And it focuses not only just on, again, as kinesiologists, as physical education professionals, we always focus on the physical health aspects. But this model over here demonstrates that it's more than just physical capital that children and adults get from being participating in physical activity. That it's more than just reducing their risk for disease or reducing their weight status. But again, like I just talked to you about, that there are emotional benefits, there's individual level benefits here that talks about sportsmanship, leadership, time management skills. There's social capital that is gained from participating in physical activity, intellectual capital, that's our academic achievement, And financial capital, what I talked about at the very beginning in terms of providing opportunities to participate in sport or exercise at a higher level that leads to increased educational and economic opportunities for both men and women. They have categorized 88 capitals or 88 resources that has promoted, if you bring all of these together, quantify all of them, not just looking at the physical capital, that this makes the human capital model, which again talks about how can we use or harness the potential of exercise, physical activity, sport, and education to make a healthier society and a healthier individual. And these capitals can be, this isn't just a one-time deal. We talk about exercise being medicine, but these capitals can be drawn, the resources from them can be drawn on throughout your lifespan. So let me give you an example here. So we know that kids, again, the primary way or the primary amount of physical activity that children are getting is coming from physical education, and that active kids and fit kids are less likely to become obese or be obese as kids. There's research that demonstrates, again, that up to there's 40% higher test scores in fit kids compared to unfit kids. They're less likely to engage in smoking, drug use, and other risky behaviors. 15% more likely to go to college, will earn 78% higher in their earnings when they get to into the workforce. They'll have lower health care costs. They will be more productive at work. So there is research that demonstrates in older, in our age individuals that physically fit or individuals who participate in exercise are less likely, they're more productive on the job and less likely to have absenteeism problems. And then just with physical activity, coming back to the physical capitals again, there's a reduced risk for heart disease and so on. And if you look over the lifespan, and children continue to be physically active throughout their life, that there is research suggesting that they will even live longer. There are also active kids or turn into active adults and produce active kids as well. So there is these compounding benefits of physical activity throughout the lifespan, and PE dramatically contributes to that. Okay, so I just wanted to give you that introduction to say, give yourselves a hand in terms of all of the wonderful things that physical education has done for the health and well-being of children and adolescents in this country and abroad. But we're at an interesting crossroads now in terms of physical education. We know all of these wonderful benefits of things that have occurred or things that are a product of participating in physical education. But at the same time, we see all of these public health dilemmas, particularly in our children, and reduced funding for physical education. So let me play this little video for you. This video is just this again. This is from the Design to Move campaign. You might not be able to hear it, so I'll just summarize it for you real quick. And it's actually asking children what would they do with an extra 5 years of life. So let's see if we can hear it.
I probably would make a time machine. I would make medicine for the sick. I'd probably invent something new. I could have an extra 5 years to live. You said 5, right? 5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much.
I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter.
I think I'd go looking for aliens.
If I could live an extra 5 years,
I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter. But I don't have any wood.
I'd probably teach my sister not to hit tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed.
If I have 5 more extra years to live, I would be the boss of all the chipmunks. Because I did nothing to do me there to piss so much. I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
So one of the world dilemmas that we have, not only in the United States, but also across the world, is that the world has stopped moving. With the increase in technology, the increase in sedentary jobs that we see that both that adults are participating in, that everything is starting to slow down. This is primarily in the transportation and occupation ranges. And again, as we see, PE is starting to lose funding, and this, again, primary ways in which kids can get their physical activity on a daily basis. And I showed you the positive things about being physically active over the lifespan, but research, the opposite of that, is that these unfit, overweight, obese kids are actually predicted to lose 2 to 5 years in their life, and this is the first time in our history as a people that children are expected to live shorter lives compared to their parents and grandparents. Okay? So despite these concerns, despite everything that we know, that everybody in this room knows, that their gym classes are being cut across the nation. So even though we know all of these wonderful benefits of physical education and PE, these rise in obesity, that we've seen a slight trend going down, but that's only in the 2 to 5-year-olds. That's not in the middle school and adolescent groups or elementary groups. That we see this decline in funding for physical education. And we see this is also at a prime time when we see that physical activity declines from the ages of 9, once kids hit adolescence, and both boys and girls, and across both during the weekday and weekends, you see that there's this dramatic 60 to 75% decrease in physical activity throughout that adolescent period. That most kids between the ages of 6 and 10, right when they get physical education, are meeting the physical activity recommendations, 60 minutes a day. But once they hit adolescence, it significantly declines. And this isn't just a phenomenon in the United States. You can see data here from 4 European countries. This is cross-sectional, but you can see in these 4, both boys and girls at age 9, that physical activity is much higher. But as the older kids, there's a much lower rate of physical activity. And this line signifies the minutes per day. Okay? In addition to physical activity decreasing, we have this simultaneous increase in sedentary behavior. So screen time, I don't have to tell any of you all about how much kids are on their phones or in front of computers or sitting down or playing video games. And so we know that at least in adults, adults spend about 4 hours a day watching television on average, and there's about 5 hours on other screens, and it's almost double that for children and adolescents. So, as I had stated before, with this decline in physical activity, we're seeing these dramatic increases in the prevalence of obesity across the nation. You can see here that the darker regions demonstrate that there's an increased obesity, so more in the southwest regions, you see the highest rates of obesity, but Michigan is still up there pretty much in terms of the amount of obesity that we have here. And if you look not as a group or as a whole, you can also see here that there are differences by race and ethnicity in terms of the obesity prevalence. These are for a wide variety of reasons, and this is some of the things that we're studying in our lab. But we see that African American and Hispanic or Latino children is about 20 to 22% compared to their white counterparts. And the individuals that we leave out the most and don't really talk about but have the highest rates are children with disabilities. And so if you look at typically developing children, if you look at all typically developing children, irrespective of race or ethnicity. You compare them with children with disabilities, you see that there's a dramatic increase or higher prevalence of obesity in this group of individuals. We also see national security problems arising again. Some things just seem sort of cyclical. This is information from the National Research Council that demonstrates 27% of young Americans are too overweight to serve in the military, and about 15,000 potential recruits fail their physicals every single year. And with all of the unrest that we have around the world, this is a huge problem if we don't have fit recruits that we can draft into the military and help with this service. So this is becoming, again, these national security issues are coming up again in terms of the health of our kids. We also see here academic underachievement. So despite what PE has done to increase academic achievement, we see underachievement. So the movie, some of you may have seen the movie on Waiting for Superman that describes these in detail. But we also know in terms of the global grade, how the United States is doing, that we're 16th in terms of in science and 23rd in terms of how we rank in terms of math. We also see achievement gaps by race and ethnicity, just really quickly. The white lines are a little difficult to see here, but we can see blacks or African American compared to their whites. That we see this trend, and there's a gap between the two groups in both reading and math. The whites are out here, and so there's this huge gap between by race and ethnicity in terms of this academic achievement. And then finally, we see this epidemic of bullying too. Again, with the increase in technology, this gives some kids an increased opportunity to be more, find ways to bully other kids, and this is a huge problem, and we're starting to see a lot of the social behavioral problems increasing in this generation, and people are taking a stand on that. But it's just very interesting that all of the things that PE helps to reduce, as it's being eliminated, you're starting to see some of these problems re-emerge. So some of the things that our lab and others have been looking on is how do we engineer physical activity back into children's lives? And you can see these are 6 of the primary ways in which people are taking a look at how do we get physical activity back into kids' lives. One is through active learning, so can we incorporate physical activity in that actual learning space? And PE would fall into this because, as you know, that you move to learn, but you also learn to move in that arena. That it's actually the physical activity that is teaching us all of these different skills in terms of individual, social, and behavioral skills. Active playground, so making sure that kids have a safe space to be active. Active transport, so there are walking school buses that are now occurring. So instead of taking a motorized school bus, that parents will walk with their kids to school just like they would on a school bus. We have active classrooms, so how do you design the space that actually allows for physical activity? Active hallways, how do you make that space a place where people can move? And then our lab particularly focuses on active breaks. So can you bring that activity into the actual classroom? And this is some of the things that we do. So we know that most teachers won't give us 10, 15, 30 minutes in a day to do physical activity. So what's the minimum amount of dose that you can give a kid that reaps physical benefits, metabolic, cognitive, psychological, and behavioral benefits that allow for these kids to be active? So they come into our lab for an 8-hour period on Saturdays, and they will, every 20 minutes, they do a 2-minute activity break. So they're either playing Wii Fit Dance, or they're doing some sort of jumping jacks, regular, skills and fun things. The kids seem to like it. It's long days for us, but the kids seem to like it. And we're looking at both academic achievement, so they'll take a little math test in the lab. We will look at how many calories they're burning in doing this, looking at their stress levels, how well do they get along, and then behavioral. What is their food consumption and physical activity outside of the lab? Some of the things that, so one opportunity is to partner with researchers in terms of figuring out what are some innovative ways in which we can infuse or engineer physical activity into the class day or school day. Like this PE can take a different form, and can PE teachers combine with other teachers in the school districts to figure out innovative ways that we can engineer physical activity back into children's lives. There's also this new emerging rebranding of physical education. So Miami-Dade Public Schools have gotten a lot of publicity with regards to how they have done innovative physical education in terms of infusing technology into their PE curriculum. So they've done it throughout the entire county, and they've reached over 300,000 kids from grades kindergarten to 12, and this was just in one school year. You can see that 61% of the kids passed 5 out of the 6 measures for fitness gram. The kids reported feeling better. There was increased inclusiveness, less game calling. The kids were actually getting along. And a lot of those behaviors or attitudes around physical activity were translated to the home environment as well. We also see these awareness campaigns in this, and so these are ways in which we can increase awareness about physical activity and its benefits. But again, most of these awareness campaigns focus primarily on sport. And my question is, where is physical education in this conversation? And is there a way in which we can develop our own awareness campaign to again share these multiple benefits that PE has brought to our kids and adolescents? My class and I did a little social experiment yesterday to see if we could launch our own social media campaign and it was hashtag Get the People Going. And if anybody is fans of Will Ferrell, this is a quote from Blades of Glory, where he was talking about, doing something provocative and motivating the people and getting them going. And so the class was like, well, can we get people interested and motivated and tell them about or make them more aware about the benefits of physical activity? Can we come together to actually promote these benefits and show the world how we are physically active and motivate others? And this is just one of my students, Becca Saunders. So we had over 49 posts yesterday, and it's very impromptu. There was no information given out to tell people to prep. The email was sent out by the dean. We posted it on our Facebook page. 49 people posted things. This is Becca. She posted stretching with one of her friends. And these posts, we were able to get the data that showed it reached over 1,800 people in 7 different countries. So just, when we talk about social media or awareness campaigns, there's over 100 people in this room. And so if we all came together and started some sort of awareness campaign or got PE on the national dialogue, this is a very right time that with all these social problems that are going on with children and adolescents, how can PE fill that gap to help improve the health and well-being of our kids? So that's where the conversation of PE did that came into play. Again, this was a conversation just with Carrie in the hallways. And as I was talking about all the wonderful things that PE has done, we came up with the hashtag of PE did that. So in terms of academic achievement, PE helped to improve academic achievement for kids. In terms of fitness, PE develops the fitness standards for children and adolescents. In terms of reducing stress or helping breed or helping to create social skills in kids, PE did that as well. So is there some way that we can all come together for a national campaign to remind the American public during these financially fiscal times where there's not as much money, that PE is something that's very important and vital to our children and can bring them together and can make it more aware so that funding is made available? Or are there other funding sources that we can find, not just from the federal government, to again reinstate or keep the PE going? So moving forward, this is my last slide. I just wanted to say that there is one way, I already kind of answered this question, but in this crossroads where we see decreased funding for PE, but we know that PE, everyone in this room knows all the wonderful things that PE has done, what are some of the things that we can do to kind of bring this together and bring PE back to the national conversation? And again, one may be around public awareness. Kids are very much in tune with social media. They're always on Facebook, always on Twitter, particularly college students, but even at the elementary schools and adolescent periods. So how can we mobilize support for physical education through public awareness campaigns? As I was talking to college students here, I gave a mini lecture on the benefits of PE, and they were organizing around how do we mandate PE here at the University of Michigan. And I asked everyone, did they enjoy PE? And everybody said yes, which I was surprised. The only thing that they didn't like was having PE in the morning because they get sweaty and stinky all day, and they didn't like changing their clothes. But they had so much fun, and they had a lot of fond memories around PE. So can we harness that energy to promote awareness around physical education? Again, for K through 12 at physical education programs, those that still have PE at their schools, is there a way that we can repackage PE to get kids, again, excited about PE like they did at Miami-Dade, where using technology, and those where PE is starting to dissipate and go away, are there innovative ways that you can partner with research that helps to bring physical activity back into kids' lives? Is there a way that PE teachers can come into the actual teaching classroom to do those little mini activity breaks and learn in a shorter period, or does it have to be its own individual class? Is there ways that we can integrate these two disciplines? And then finally, at colleges and universities, those of us that work at universities, can we have conversations around mandating PE even at the university level? The little secret that we never talk about is that we know that kids are healthier when they come to the university than when they leave. Kids typically gain more weight, they engage in much more alcohol consumption. There's a wide variety of things that occur while they're on the college campus, and is there a way that we can not only improve their mental health or their intellectual health, but their physical health as well? So that is all that I have. Thank you for your attention, and I'm available for any